Welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show, your source for intel, forecasts, and success strategies. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. I am so happy you are with us today. We have an incredible show for you today, and this segment is brought to you by Arbor Crowd. If you want some professional crowdfunding for commercial real estate, check them out at arborcrowd.com. Today we're going to talk about student housing, and as multifamily has had a great ride, well, so has student housing. What should we expect moving forward? So we're going to talk to some experts today. Please welcome my first guest, Taylor Gunn. Taylor is Director of Student Housing with RealPage, and she's joining us on the phone. Taylor, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. Glad to be back.
So Taylor, how is student housing performing? It seems like a couple college towns I've been, it seems like I see a lot of cranes and a lot of new buildings.
Yeah, so overall, kind of what we're seeing, at least for the fall 2018 leasing season, we're seeing pre-lease averaging slightly below last year's pace, a little bit ahead of 67% leased overall, kind of nationally speaking, which is down about 147 basis points, and that's looking kind of at April numbers. And then kind of looking at annual effective rent and rent growth, we're seeing some compression in that as well. Rents are averaging a little bit over $650 a bed for this upcoming fall, and that's up 1.4% from what we saw last year. So a little bit of compression relative to what we've seen over the last couple of years, but still pretty in line with kind of historical numbers and still overall pretty strong. And we're not necessarily seeing a good portion of properties dropping rents. I think about 26% have negative rent growth. So we're seeing kind of flat to moderate rent growth kind of overall for most properties, just some compression in year-over-year leasing velocity.
Okay, so a little bit more of a normal market. So what do you expect moving forward, Taylor?
So we can expect a little bit more of this kind of finishing out this leasing season. We'll expect overall occupancy come fall to be slightly below where it was last year, and rents to kind of stay a little bit, rent growth to stay a little bit compressed. Obviously, a lot of this ties back to the volume of supply in specific markets. So as some of that supply kind of levels out, the market's able to recover. But we can expect, some rebound for a few markets in particular over the next couple of years because we're not expecting as much supply. But I mean, pretty steady performance I think we can expect going forward.
Okay, and you mentioned supply. So have we had a lot of supply? Like I said, seems like I've seen a lot of cranes in some of these cities.
Yeah, so if we look kind of nationally speaking, we're expecting a little bit over 47,000 beds to deliver this fall. That's pretty in line with what we've seen over the past few years. It's averaged between 44,000 and 48,000 beds. So from a national view, it's been pretty steady, pretty consistent, and that's spread across 73 different schools. So if we look kind of across some of those specific schools, there's a few in particular that are seeing higher levels of supply than they've seen in the past, but also pretty consistent, strong volumes of supply. So Florida State, Texas A&M, UT Austin are a couple that are seeing over 1,000 beds. Florida State and Texas A&M are kind of well above the rest of the marketplace with over 2,000 beds coming online at both schools individually, which is pretty consistent with what some of them have seen in the past, and that's kind of affecting those markets. Florida State not as much today, but Texas A&M has definitely seen an impact from that supply in recent years.
We're talking with Taylor Gunn with RealPage about student housing. So Taylor, it seems like when the job market was having issues, college attendance was really up. What do you see for attendance now, and kind of what does the industry think moving forward?
So, I think overall enrollment is pretty steady at kind of your public four-year state universities. There are a few of those state schools that have a higher percentage of international students. And so we're seeing some slowing and even negative enrollment growth from those schools as international enrollment slows. But with the economy pretty stable across most states, we're still seeing pretty steady enrollment growth for most of kind of your public four-year universities. If you look kind of at your two-year universities, that's where we're seeing the most kind of negative enrollment growth. And actually, if you look at during recessionary periods and when the economy's down, that's kind of where we see the biggest growth is at your two-year schools.
I see. And what are some of the other trends, Taylor, that could impact student housing either positively or negatively?
So I think kind of negatively speaking, like I mentioned, the international enrollment. Also, I would say just some pullback in state funding. So your larger state universities, or even just your state schools, your public state schools that receive funding from the state, if there's any kind of fluctuation in the economy related to funding that could impact the school, that could have an impact on enrollment. I think also in terms of, it could be a good thing and a bad thing, increased competition in the space. We're seeing the industry continue to grow, which is a really great thing, but with any growing industry, you see some good things and some bad things come from it. One of that's increased competition. So you see a little bit of growing pains in terms of that, but I think kind of long term it's positive. We're seeing more institutional investment come into the space, and that kind of continues. We've seen that over the past couple of years. So overall, I think those are kind of some key things to
And Taylor, as you guys are talking to clients, are you seeing more interest in student housing from like normal apartment developers? Any new interest in the sector?
Absolutely. We're actually seeing quite a bit of that. We get about a call a week from a conventional owner, operator, developer, investor interested in getting into the student housing space.
And what should a developer, owner, or investor think about that might be a little different in student housing than in normal multifamily?
I would say really understand the market. Go in, dig deep into the data, understand the demographics of the students, understand what's kind of driving enrollment growth, what the university's plans are, because what we see a lot of times is, a market has strong enrollment growth, but the university's long-term plans aren't necessarily consistent with that. So that can have an impact on what the market can expect for demand going forward. Or are they switching, their living requirements, so they're now going to require sophomores and freshmen to live on campus, which then takes away from kind of the demand pool. I think also for any conventional operator or owner or developer that isn't necessarily looking to operate, I think it's important to kind of leverage those who have been in the space for a long time and understand how to operate a student property. I think more and more today we're seeing the operational component as well as kind of leasing and marketing strategies help people stay kind of ahead of the competitive marketplace and give you a little bit of a leg up in terms of staying ahead of your performance and kind of maintaining a competitive edge in a growing market.
Yeah, those are great tips, Taylor. So what would you leave our audience with a thought related to student housing?
I would say, and I think we covered a lot of it, but I think, overall the industry is still growing. We're seeing great things at a lot of different schools. I think generally it's important, like I mentioned, just digging into the numbers, like not taking just because we're seeing compression at a national level, not taking that as a bad sign for the industry. I think we need to, as an industry overall, kind of learn from what's happening in certain markets and kind of apply that across other schools that haven't seen it yet or saw it in the past, and kind of learn and grow from all of the different things happening with this industry.
Yeah, well, great information, Taylor. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
And stay with us. We're going to have more on student housing after this short break. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.